All right, so we're going to continue on with our unit on product, and we're going to jump into product marketing strategies. All right, so our objectives in this section is really to talk about the product life cycle and how that impacts strategy, and then also talk about positioning and how products are positioned in the market. So probably no surprise to you, products go through a life cycle, just like we do. And this life cycle that was put together, it's called the PLC, or product life cycle. And it really starts from introduction, where you have actually two phases: research and development, and then you have launch, so you actually launch your product. You have growth, you have maturity, and then you have decline. So that's the normal kind of steps in a product. And this makes sense, right? So if you came out with a, I'm trying to think of a cassette player, right? You had the Walkman, Sony Walkman, way back in the day, where you have a cassette that had an introduction where it grew very slow, right? And part of that was because it was a competitor, and the competitor was the record album and other tape systems that were out that were larger. And so it takes off very slowly, and then all of a sudden it catches on, and people start going, hey, I can not only, is this smaller, but I can take this around with me, and I can re-record on this. And so all of a sudden there's this huge growth that happens. And then as more and more people get it, right, all of a sudden you have 50% of the people in the United States or in the world have it. There's only so much growth left. And then it kind of starts, stabilizing, and then it actually starts declining. And the reason for decline is usually a new product comes out, the DVD or streaming or whatever came out and basically killed the cassette player. So that's kind of the product life cycle in a nutshell. Now, every stage that you're at, it really has different marketing implications. So in research and development, you have really high expenses, right? Because you're developing out a product, you're spending a lot to figure out how this actually thing could work. You really don't have much in terms of marketing at that very first part, research and development. But when you launch the product, obviously you're going to be spending a lot of money actually launching it. And that could be because you're advertising it a lot, but also probably the biggest expense that people forget about is that you're actually building inventory for the first time. You take a product like, and I'll just take this little light that I have, right? Very cool little light. But this light actually, right, has a number of molds that to make this. And each one of those molds at high volume is probably going to cost $10,000, $15,000, right? And so you've got a lot of expense just there, and then obviously making the product itself. So in this early stage, there's really two different pricing strategies that are used. Either you skim or you penetrate. Skimming means you're basically pricing it super high. And what you're trying to do is just get the top end of customers. You don't care about everyone. You're just trying to get those customers that really see the benefit of it, right? So when Apple first put out its iPhone, it actually priced it really high, right? Cell phones were going for $200, and all of a sudden they're pricing it at $1,200 or $1,000, and nobody thought of a cell phone at $1,000, right? Nobody could imagine that. And Apple didn't care. They weren't looking for everyone. At that first time, they were looking for those customers that really wanted that experience. So that's one way. Now you may only get 0.5% or less. That's okay. You're getting a lot per phone. The other way to do it is penetrate. And what you're trying to do is you're going to price it really low, and you want to get as many people using it as possible, or what we call market share, right? You want to get 20% market share as soon as you can. And you actually may price it out at such a price that you actually initially lose money. But that's part of your strategy, right? Is basically you're figuring out how can I get enough market share so that I can actually get economies of scale so that when I do buy, right, something like this, I can get cheaper prices on the plastic that's made, on the LEDs that are part of this, and my price actually will go down in the long run, but maybe initially it's high. Then you go to growth. This is, as I said, is when sales start increasing, you start approaching profitability, you start seeing actually competitors come in because they're starting to see this is a real market, and they're going to come after you. The strategy in this time is gain market share. So generally, you're not going to increase prices. You're going to bring them down a little bit or maintain them. And what you're also trying to do is get great brand recognition, right? You want to be that company, to use my light. You want to be the light company, right? Everyone knows that this is your product, no one else's. That's kind of what Apple did, just to take another product. That's what Apple did with the iPhone, right? They basically made it in such a way that when you looked at this, everyone knew this is an iPhone. And so you're going to advertise and promote to establish that. And your expenses are going to rise because of that. So now you've been in the market for a couple years. All of a sudden, your revenue is peaking out, right? So where before, right, maybe 2% of the market had smartphones, all of a sudden now 40% of the market or 50% of the market has phones. And that really all we're doing today in a mature market is you're replacing, every 4 years, you're replacing basically people's phones. And you're not really penetrating any new markets. So it becomes very competitive, like the cell phone market has become. And your strategy is really you're spending more and more in marketing to defend your market share, as well as maybe to gain a little bit or steal market share from somebody else. That's what happens during maturity. Pricing usually is fairly stable or dropping at this point. Then you have decline. So all of a sudden, my light, which was great for a while, now is in decline, right? There's other products that are out there that maybe are better than that. So I have a couple different options, right? I'm losing money. I'm probably not losing money, but my profits are starting to go down. So I'm seeing the end is near. So a couple things I could do. I could drop the product and just say, you know what? It's not worth it marketing this product anymore. I'm going to put my money in my phone, right? Or I'm going to put money promoting something else. I may sell it or license it. So this may still be an okay product for somebody else, but it isn't for me. I'll license this out to them and let them sell it and do whatever they want with it. I could cut costs, right? Cut the pricing on it. I could take it from, hey, we used to sell these phones at $1,000. Now we're going to sell it at $500. And you see Apple actually doing that, right? That they've actually got 2 tiers of products now that have come out, right? They have their new iPhones, the iPhone Pro, and then they basically have this old iPhone. And the old iPhones are selling at like $400, and you have the new ones selling at $1,200. You could regionalize it, so meaning, hey, we're not going to sell it throughout the world anymore. We're going to just sell it in these countries or these states. You could modernize it, right? So this product only has one light, and it flashes. Maybe if I could make it multiple colors, and maybe if it could somehow sense the beat of music, I could modernize it and alter it. Or the last one is really I could recommit. And this is kind of an interesting strategy in which you basically say, you know what, I understand profits are going down, but this is still a big enough market that I believe I can drive my competitors out, and I can actually gain market share in this. Right? So this is something like Facebook would do, right? They recommitted to their platform. So it originally was launched for college students. It basically took over college students, and then they recommitted, and they basically went after all these different groups. groups, right? Young families, affinity groups, multi-generational groups, reunions internationally, and they're expanding into basically everything, right? And they have groups for everybody. And so Facebook basically recommitted, pivoted their business plan and went after a different market. Super interesting. Last thing I want to talk about is positioning. And positioning is really a strategy used by a company to differentiate its products or services from its competitors. And it's basically just saying, hey, how are we going to be different than others? There's a theory actually out there by Tracy and Wormsma that would say you really can do this in 3 ways. One way is you can have the best product out there. So you position yourself as a best product, you basically become the technology leader in that, and that would be a company like Apple, I think with their iPhones before, would be said, hey, we are the leader. Now, I understand Android phone people may say that's differently, but I believe that that's kind of what Apple goes after. You can also win in operationally excellence, or your excellence in that. And you have companies like Amazon that does that, right? It's insane how good they are. They can deliver a product next day or 2 days, right, with their Prime system. So they basically are killing everyone in the industry because they can do it cheaper than anyone else because they're so operationally excellent. And then you really have to have customer intimacy. Is kind of the last one, is how responsive are you to the customer and giving them what they want and what they need. And this theory basically would say you can compete on any one of these, right? Usually you only compete on one of them. So if you think about any company, you could probably say, hey, they compete on this versus this. One last comment on this is you actually have 2 levels. And this darkened area here, that is basically you have to be above that level to compete. So if I'm Apple and I have great products, I have great customer intimacy, but I'm operationally in this zone, I'm going to lose because I'm not good enough. I have to actually be at least competent. And that would go for anybody. And then once you're above this line and outside of this kind of low level, then you can compete and decide which product or which area that you would be best in. So that's positioning in a nutshell. You'll have some exercises on this. Have a great day.